Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here for the Westchester-Putnam Workforce Development Board annual meeting. With us today are David Singer, the chair, and Paul Grenschke, the vice chair, and other board members on our board. We're grateful for their appearance here today. There are a lot of conflicting things going on these days, so we appreciate that. And he will say a few words in a minute, and he also has a few other things going on. That's our county executive, George Latimer in Westchester. And also our partner, Kevin Byrne from Putnam County. And Judah Holstein and Catherine Parker from the Westchester County Legislature. And former state senator on the Rockland side, David Carlucci, has also joined us today, and we'll have a few words. And also, I just wanted to recognize Carrie Douglas Duffy, who's a major partner for our New York State Department of Labor partnership. So she's here from Albany, and we appreciate that partnership and the other DLL staff. So, I'm personally really eager to see this presentation from Mercer. And in the last month, in the New York Times, on the front page or the front page of the business section, there have been the following stories, 1 month. OpenAI unveils new ChatGPT voice assistant free to users. AI's effect on the election, not yours, George, is mostly theoretical. Insiders warn of OpenAI's reckless race to #1. AI firms face scrutiny for evidence of antitrust. Google features uses AI for health answers. Should it be trusted? AI can help plan your summer vacation. A chatbot that chats and charms like her. Latest AI innovation is conquering banter, and it's uncannily lovable. And if AI can do your job, maybe it can also replace your CEO. Not CE, CEO. And just this week, of course, NVIDIA has become the highest valued company with a capitalization rate of 3.22 trillion, with a T, overtaking Microsoft. So there's no better time to hear from some experts about what all of this means for all of us, whether we're in workforce, economic development, government, business sector, not-for-profits, youth services, adult services. It's really no end to this. And what we have to do as workforce professionals is to work with our job seekers and our businesses to make sure they have the tools to allow them to succeed and to utilize AI to make it make sense and to make it worthwhile for all of us, not to be scared of it, and that's what you're going to hear next, but to embrace it because it's here, as you can see from these articles. It's not going anyplace. So we have to be informed and we have to utilize it to the best of our ability. So to help us do that, Vlad Gogish is the senior principal in Mercer's Connecticut office. He advises clients across industries on human capital issues, including rewards, talent strategy, and HR transformation. And his colleague, Sam Winstel, is the senior associate in Mercer's New York office, specializing in communications and change management, and typically consults with clients on benefit strategy, technology implementations, and digital solutions. So they're going to give a presentation. And then after that, there are a couple people from our educational institutions, and Legislator Holstein will have a word just to start the conversation, and then we'll have an open Q&A, and we're going to make sure we leave time for that. So, Vlad and Sam, thank you. You know what? I only forgot. You never should forget to introduce the boss first, because County Executive Latimer and County Executive Byrne are first going to come up and bring greetings.
I don't know if Kevin thought this, but I think he thought AI replaced us already. It is a pleasure to be here. I'll keep it short so we get to the substance of why we're here. But any good county executive reintroduces county legislators that he's responsible to work with. So both Catherine Park and Judah Holstein are here today, and it's good to be with my friends as well. And Kevin and I and David Carlucci in various capacities served together in the state legislature. We were just comparing notes about how fortunate we are to be responsible for county governments, because an issue like this, it is the ability to accomplish something that you can do in a government. And we have that opportunity, both Kevin and myself, with professionals such as those in this room, to do those things. I was born in 1953, which dates me, but I remember when my parents got a TV set in 1956. It was also the year that my sister was born. And I could watch cartoons on this box in my house. Some other kids in the neighborhood got TV sets before we did, and we couldn't wait to have a TV set. And as a kid, I embraced it, as all young people do, something new, and to my parents, it was an amazing thing to have a box that had visual images on it. That seems pretty quaint now. I do remember reading years later as an adult that Newton Minow was head of the FCC in those days, and he talked about television in 1961 as being a vast wasteland of material. And that was well before reality TV and voice and all these other things that came along. I remember in my work career being on an assignment in Northern California, Santa Cruz, California, where I was pinch hitting as marketing director for a unit for 6 weeks while we were getting somebody to come in to take the job. And I had the client, the sales force of that unit come in and talk to me about their clients. And one of the clients we had was a major software company based out in Silicon Valley that was losing market share to a company called Microsoft. And I said, Microsoft, what is that? And the salesman said, I don't know. It's a company up in the Seattle area. I've just heard of them now. If I had known what Microsoft was and I had invested in it at that point in time, then I'd probably be sitting in my castle not having to work for a living. I remember a few years after that, the first time I was in another assignment in central New Jersey, and somebody came in and said, we have a conference and it's on the topic of www.world Wide Web. And I said, what's that? And he says, well, it's the internet. I said, let me repeat my question. What is that? And he said, well, it's data that you can get access to. I said, well, where's the server that it's located in? And he goes, no, it's not in a server. With every single year that passes by, there are things that happen that hit us at the front end, and we don't really understand it. I certainly don't. Some in this room would. We don't understand it. Understand that it has the potential to expand and become dominant in our world. When I first heard about Facebook or MySpace, whatever the other ones were at that time, I had no idea that it would launch a social media revolution. And now with the death of local newspapers and local radio stations and the rise of social media, more people get their information from social media and the internet than get it from traditional sources of media that get vetted and so forth. So it's a different world we live in. So I hear the letters AI, artificial intelligence. Now, I think about Keanu Reeves as Neo in The Matrix. That's 20 years ago. And is that the world we're heading to? Well, there's an upside and a downside to every one of these things. Television has had a great influence on the society, both for the good and for the ill. And the internet has had both an advantage and a disadvantage. And social media has an advantage and a disadvantage. So as I sit here today, sort of late in my chronological life, and I think about what AI is today, is just the beginning of something that I can't really grasp because I don't have the scientific mind. But I do know in my public life, along with my colleagues in public life, we have to understand it better. We have to understand how to harness the benefits of it, and to harness those benefits on behalf of our responsibilities, and for Kevin and my case right now, in county government. But we also have to understand that there are potential risks, and when we see, and I know Kevin and I both have dealt with this, when we see hacking into a county government that happened out in Suffolk County, and what chaos could occur from that, we know that we turn to our IT professionals and say, not only help us to see the upside, but help us prepare for what could be the downside of these things. And of course, the imagination can take you anywhere, both on the positive and negative side. So we reach out to each other. We reach out to those who have made their career in the area of information technology, have made their career in technology, to help those of us who have less technological skills understand how best to harness it. And that's what today is about. Today is a dialogue. I don't suspect in the year 2054, we would look back on 2024 in any other ways of saying, well, that was just the infancy of AI, in the same way that by the 70s and the 80s, we look back on the creation of television of the 50s as being something completely different. So the challenge is to us, as reasonably intelligent people in a democracy where there are lots of different voices that can agree and disagree, we have to figure out what is it that AI can be, how can we harness it properly, how can we anticipate as best as we can the downside, and be intelligent, prudent people, and to do it in a way that as the next generation of decision makers come along, we hand them something that has a procedure and process. And that's going to be difficult to do, but that's why we're here today. I'm happy to have many of our county professionals who are here today, who have great reliance on. Kevin and I share Tom and his team's professionalism here. We have others in the room from DSS and other departments, and I really welcome their leadership and their advice to us as we make those decisions. So welcome, and unfortunately, as happens in this world, I've got to go to 2 other things. So I'm going to rely on those who are here today to give me a sense of what we have to do and go forward, and hopefully together, and not only the 2 of us in this particular, but our other friends in the Valley, Rockland and Dutchess and Orange, that we find ways to use this positively and use it together. Thank you all very much. I'm going to take the prerogative of introducing Kevin Byrne, Putnam County Executive. He has previously served in his home community, in public office, and served in the New York State Assembly, and with different political parties, but he is a wonderful guy. I'm pleased to be his colleague. County Executive Kevin Byrne.
First, let me thank your County Executive, George Latimer, for being, yet again, another gracious host. I was here, I believe, last year to discreet and say hello before our friends and colleagues within the Westchester-Putnam Workforce Partnership, members of the board. All the work that you do, the mission that you fulfill, it impacts the lives of so many people that call Putnam and Westchester home. So, first of all, thank you. Second of all, I want to make sure I recognize people appropriately. I don't have any county legislators here from Putnam, but we do have some of our staff from DSS and the Youth Bureau. We have Marie Daly, Janine and Tish from our Youth Bureau are here as well. And we want to make sure we extend a warm welcome to them and say thank you for being here, participating. When we talked about AI and its importance for innovation moving forward, it seems to be an ever-changing technology, and we're always trying to find new creative ways on how we can embrace it. But when we speak about it internally in county government up in Putnam County, I speak to my staff, I speak to my department heads, we talk about it as it's to augment our services, right? We don't want to necessarily transplant the work, but we want to augment the customer services, the constituent services for our residents, and how we can be better public servants in serving our taxpayers and residents and the people that visit Putnam County. I'm reminded by a few different things from recent headlines. How many people saw in the news AI Steve? You know what AI Steve is, right? Oh wow, AI Steve is like on national news last week. The guy is, it's some AI candidate running for parliament in the United Kingdom. Don't worry, George, I don't think he's running for Congress. We're good. So, but like, who would have thought? Who would have thought? So there's obviously like a lot of these things that are constantly changing, and in Putnam County, we're trying to be innovative too. It's some of the, for people of all abilities, of all ages. One thing we was talking about on the way down here was the work that our social services and specifically the Youth Bureau did just a couple of weeks ago. They hosted a youth business market at our local county park at Tilly Foster Farm, right in the town of Southeast, where we tried to open up and encourage entrepreneurship for people of all ages. Specifically, though, this was for youth, and this was for people aged 5 to 17. Where they sold all sorts of amazing products, and those that sold food or lemonade stands, they actually had to call our health department and make sure they didn't use contaminated water because we don't want people getting sick. But it was really awesome. We had people sell all sorts of important things, and all of these young people got great joy out of building their own little small business, and we had I think over 600 people come. But was really special is when I was walking around and we didn't give them instruction. I don't believe the Youth Bureau gave us instruction. More than half of them had a Venmo set up. I'm like, I don't think I had a Venmo account until maybe 2 years ago. And you have like a 7-year-old saying, "Oh no, it's okay. You don't need to use cash, Mr. Burr. You can buy my $5 cake pop for on Venmo." So after I got shook down and I left with the money left, we were obviously very pleased with the final outcome. But that's just how we think differently in county government and how we embrace new opportunities. And we have to do that by working with everybody. And it does mean a lot to me that we have strong partnerships with our neighbors in Westchester County. When I was in the state assembly, I represented most of Putnam and then a portion of northern Westchester, Yorktown, and Somers. And in doing so, I worked with George Latimer's administration, his predecessor's administration, and we have a very strong relationship when there is issues. We can call upon one another. We have mutual aid agreements for everything that's tied to public health, public safety, emergency services. We do rely on one another, and it's important because most people that are on the road, they're not looking at the county line or a town line, and if they're in an emergency and they call 911, they just want someone to show up. So it's important that politics is removed from the equation, and then we have good public servants working together. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. It's great to see my former colleague Dave Carlucci here. I heard George Latimer mention his birthday. I don't think I want to say mine. I think maybe Dave and I are around early 1980s. So, but we're it's just great to see you, and thank you for being here. And I hope you enjoy a great presentation and enjoy the afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, both county execs, for being able to be here with us. And I want to introduce John Beefus, First Deputy Commissioner, Department of Social Services, to bring greetings on behalf of Commissioner Leonard Towns.
All right, good morning, everybody. How are we doing? Everybody refreshed? Yeah. All right, let me start the morning with bringing some and sharing some bad news before we jump into the discussion. And it's important because it's news that's related to our workforce. Some of you may have seen coverage, but Maria Cotto, who is one of our longtime Department of Social Services employees, 15+ year employee, lost her life yesterday, did pass as a result of a severe beating she suffered last month while doing her job in the community. And she's been a Department of Social Services employee working in child welfare, working in housing, really dedicated her professional career to working with people. So I know we're going to talk a lot about the impact of artificial intelligence, but we in social services know you can't separate the work from people. As we saw from COVID, isolation can be a real challenge and do damage, and relationships are critical to success. So as important as this is, and not to diminish it, we also recognize that connection, people, and the interface with technology is going to be important. And so I know that's not good news. The Commissioner Towns would have been here, but he's in Peekskill with our team, where Maria was a longtime employee supporting our team, and I think you'll see more information about services and support. And certainly our hearts, our thoughts, our prayers go out to Maria and her family. So if we could just take a moment to remember and think about people out there in the workforce that do the work every single day. Okay, thank you. And as you launch into this important discussion and this important work, Tom, I think I can say that we who have been through changes in our professional career know that they can be challenging, they can be fearful, and they create lots of anxiety, but we also recognize the opportunity. So as you move forward with this discussion, let's keep in mind all of the important opportunities, but also keep in mind the important relationships that we all bring to the work we do every day. So thank you and have a good morning.
Thank you, John. I prematurely gave the introductions for Vlad and Sam, so come on up.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Oh, look at that. We haven't been replaced yet. By way of introduction, Vlad Gogish with Mercer. This is my colleague Sam. I feel like this is a homecoming for me. I grew up in White Plains. Raise your hand if you graduated from White Plains High School. All right, I see a few hands. So good. So I'm always excited to be back, what I consider my hometown. So we're gonna try to do a flyby, just keeping an eye on time. We want to leave some time for questions. So the goal isn't to get through all our slides, but to hit the highlights and leave some time for the questions at the end. So with that, let's get into the agenda. We'll very briefly cover the history of AI. Gen AI is new, AI is not. We'll talk about context setting, and then how we are at Mercer, so we're in the business of advising companies on HR issues, so we couldn't do a presentation without talking about AI and HR. And then we'll try to give just a flavor for what's possible through some examples. And if anyone has questions, feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn for further conversation. So with that.
Yeah, I'll kick us off, and bear with me for 1 second, because we have a couple of short videos, but that speak to really practical applications for AI and something that's really simple to do. So I'm just gonna play this.
Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today. We're excited to have a conversation with you about the possibilities of generative AI. At Mercer, we're working with clients across industries to use AI to support workforce transformation and enhance the employee experience. We're looking forward to sharing some of our ideas with you.
So that's an introduction video, obviously, that I recorded myself. I took that, put it into a generative AI machine, and produced this.
Hola, gracias por unirse. Estamos emocionados de tener una conversación sobre las posibilidades de la IA generativa. En Mercer, estamos trabajando con clientes para usar la IA para apoyar la transformación laboral y mejorar la experiencia del empleado. Esperamos compartir algunas de nuestras ideas.
So I don't speak Spanish. Does anyone in the audience speak Spanish? Can one of the speakers comment on, like, if you had to give an out of 10, would you say it's like 7, 8, 9 out of 10?
Yeah, solid 10.
Wow, solid 10. Okay. All right. Well, that's good. That's pretty good.
I don't speak Spanish. I made this video start to finish. It took me about 15 minutes, and I used a free application to do it. So that's that. It's that simple. There are a lot of tools and applications like these out there if you're looking for it. And this one is one that I think we find very useful, not just as like a gimmick, but could be really, really impactful to translate something, particularly if you're not a native speaker. So to get us started, we wanted to do a little bit of an interactive brainstorming session. If you're willing and have your phones on you, we have this QR code available. We're just asking what words, phrases, or analogies come to mind when you hear AI. It should bring up a Menti poll. You should be able to insert a couple different answers, and once everyone has gotten a second to get the QR code down, I'll move over to the Menti site so we can see everybody's answers in real time.
It went away.
Yeah.
Ah, perfect. Okay. Okay. So see here. A lot of focus on future, technology, innovation, transformative, machine learning, productivity enhancer, easy, cool, so pretty positive. I don't want to only talk about the good, I think there's some risks as well. False, I saw false in there. I think that's a very important point, that these systems are made for sounding natural and believable, so you always have to double, if not triple check the answers they give you. If you hear nothing else of me today, let me repeat this. You have to double and sometimes triple check the answers you get from Gen AI. Treat it like an intern. So you can give it work, but you have to check it very carefully. Any comments from you, Sam?
No, I think to point out, I saw potential job loss on here, scary, misunderstood. I think those are very real and relevant concerns, particularly in the workforce space, and something we hear from clients a lot, but we'll talk about those pieces a little bit here in a second too.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Thank you for humoring us and providing the input. So very briefly, as far as the history of AI goes, there's kind of before I talk about the 4 phases of AI, I think the point on this slide is you as the user are accountable for how you use it. So we don't work for OpenAI or any tech company. We are not techies. We are consultants for HR and change management. And we also work with a lot of HR departments and lawyers. We are not lawyers, but we understand that employment law can be tricky. In fact, I just read a blog post that said that based on a survey, people would be willing to sue an algorithm. So while there's a lot of opportunity, there's also some risk. You bear the responsibility as the user. So you should always use this with the right understanding, read the right fine print, understand that it's very powerful, but it's limited and it can be biased, right? Every AI has a human parent. And if you're in any kind of employment decisions, whether you're promoting people, deciding how to compensate people, hiring people, always ensure that you're in compliance with the law. And if you have any questions, please talk to a legal professional. So again, very important point. We're not just sitting here talking about the opportunities, we also have to acknowledge the risks. This is, what we view this as is even more so than television. It's really the printing press moment of our time. The printing press was the first time that people could read books on a scale that was unprecedented. It caused transformations in society, it caused revolutions, it caused the emergence of entire new classes in society because people could access knowledge more equally. So there is this idea of AI being a way to democratize access and knowledge, but also the printing press was disruptive. Prior to that, books were transcribed by hand, so scribes had to basically learn new skills, and I'm sure we can all come up with other metaphors, but there's absolutely going to be some level of disruption as this new transformative technology takes hold. And if we go to the next page, I'll be very brief here. There's what we see as 4 stages of AI. AI has been around for decades. Research on it started years ago. The first phase were rule-based systems where you could tell a system a specific predefined set of rules and it would follow those rules to give you information back. So an example of that would be an applicant tracking system. So you could tell the applicant tracking system, I want these basic qualifications. If the resume doesn't meet them, then reject the candidate. The second phase was machine learning, where the AI used statistical patterns in the data to make predictions. So an example of that could be learning paths. If a person was interested in learning more about a particular topic or skill, the learning management system could see what others in a similar situation benefited from and would recommend classes. 3.0 was deep learning, where AI actually learned from the data and used the concept of neural networks, which is a statistical technique that resembles the way humans think. And an example there would be looking at employee sentiment from surveys or looking at Twitter and trying to understand, based on what people are saying using natural language, what what the sentiment was and drawing conclusions from that. And then where we are today, as of November of 2022, when ChatGPT came out, is generative AI. So it's something that's capable of using training data and large language models, actually generating net new content. And we gave you a very brief example of that, where you could see in Sam's voice, it took what he said in one language and seamlessly translated into another. It can generate images. Apparently it can generate a candidate for parliament. So it's very exciting, but also very scary.
So it almost goes without saying at this point, I think, but generative AI we see as a really unique opportunity to redesign work and upskill employees for the future. When we think about AI at its most basic level, it can automate some of the more mundane tasks that our day-to-day jobs entail, data entry, simple writing and editing. But our leaders in generative AI at Mercer talk a lot about what they call the hands, head, and heart model. We think about the hands as those day-to-day simple tasks that you're doing in emails and spreadsheets, things like that. The head work is what takes a little bit more creative thinking, sort of those complicated sort of subject matter expertise type situations that you actually drive as somebody in your role at work. And then the heart piece of that is really that human touch, the empathy, the novel creativity that generative AI just never will be able to replicate. And when we think about that, generative AI can certainly step in those hands pieces and do some of that work. They can augment some of our human abilities to help us with the head work, but there will always be that heart piece for human interaction with AI to sort of advance AI, make it better, and actually make it a useful tool for ourselves in the workspace. So once again, there's been a lot of talk about the conversation around AI. You can hardly read the news or watch anything without sort of there being a reference to AI, and I'm sure it's come up a lot in the workspace, in your own professional lives. But I think less than 3 years ago, the headlines were a lot different. It looked like data and security issues, plagiarism in the academic space, and teaching students about using AI, to now there's really been a significant shift in the workplace. That's what we're seeing at Mercer. A lot of our clients are no longer really skeptical and hesitant about AI. Instead, they're asking, how can they be implementing it? What can they do to make it sort of enterprise level at their organization? And when can they do it? Can they do it now? There's still, I think, that piece of uncertainty, and we caution a lot of our clients who are looking to just dive into it and let their employees sort of run wild with things like ChatGPT. But the urgency is certainly there, and there's a lot of optimism around it. And I think that comes about in these really practical tools that you can use both in your personal lives or in your professional setting. So when we think about generative AI and sort of this transformation of work, we're looking at 3 buckets really: work, workforce, and the employee experience. So work is really the details of those individual jobs, and the ways that AI can implement, improve, and accelerate those things you're doing on a day-to-day basis. That workforce piece is really that augmenting human ability and how you can implement systems to make it easier for your employees to do things faster, and potentially improve revenue, speed up efficiencies within the organization. And then this last piece on the employee experience side really speaks to the HR component of the work we do at Mercer. And we work a lot and think a lot with the HR departments about how they can be using the data that comes from AI to analyze things like performance and different sort of process improvements that they could be implementing to make work patterns a little bit easier within organizations. But of course, within the opportunity comes a lot of risks. We've talked a little bit about these already today, but first and foremost, I think, is the security and data privacy. We know that with AI just comes a lot of data, and when you're using that, again, either personally or professionally, you're putting data out there and you're letting these systems react to it and use it to create patterns, and that's of course a concern. Secondly, there's the reliability and validity of that data and that knowledge. We know that the answers you get out from AI is only going to be as good as the inputs you put in. So if there's any inconsistencies in the data it's receiving, it's gonna give you an answer that you're not gonna want. And then third is what we call hallucinations, which just means that generative AI does have the ability to create content that just isn't true or doesn't really exist in the real world. And for that reason, there is always a role for a human expert in human review at the end of sort of the process of using generative AI. So with that, Mercer has 5 simple risk mitigation sort of guidelines and framework that we like to talk about with our clients. The first and foremost is just governance and framework. These are guidelines that HR departments can implement, as simple as like policies and procedures for individual use cases at work. Monitoring and auditing AI systems is important. These aren't static tools. AI is constantly learning from new data, so that auditing process is important. Third, again, the outputs are only as good as the inputs, so the data has to be correct and fair and sort of without bias in the first place if you want to get good results. And then 4 and 5 kind of go together. The human oversight piece, again, there has to be these feedback loops, there has to be an expert behind the scenes ensuring that audits are happening and there's sort of a transparent communication about how to use these things for individual employees.
Okay, great. So I will speak briefly about HR. So yeah, let's do another Menti. So as you think about your role, whatever your role happens to be, whether you're in the market as a job seeker or looking to hire people, we'd like to hear about what parts of your role, however you define it, you'd like to optimize with AI. Data entry, yes, that is absolutely something we would all like to optimize. Boring stuff, yes. Well, that, I think, as Sam said, the head, heart, hands, the stuff we do with our hands, especially the writing reports, data entry, even data analysis, there's a lot of opportunity to literally, if you have the right tools, to drag and drop a file into the AI and ask it questions, which can really speed up the report writing process. Summarizing information is a really good point. So one way to use AI in any kind of setting where there's a lot of words, whether you're in insurance and you're looking at policies, or you're in government looking at legislation, having the ability to summarize a lot of content is a very important augmentation. I liked what Kevin said about augmenting the work of whatever it is that you're doing, whatever your thing is. Anything you would add? Any observations here?
No, I think I'm seeing cover letters, a lot related to job applications and processes. Anecdotally, I've heard from teachers and administrators and those types of people who are writing cover letters, recommendation letters for folks that they work with. That's a really great tool and resource to use for it. It saves a ton of time.
Yeah, agreed. And I certainly use it for looking at emails. Somebody said something about drafting emails, so we have the ability for it to, in a secure way, draft email responses or review whatever we're doing. One thing that I found useful is actually having it review using different personas. So if it writes one email, I say, okay, now review it as a busy executive. Okay, now review it as an angry client. And then it actually, that's the beauty of generative AI, is depending on how you ask or prompt it, you get different answers. And we'll talk about prompting in a minute. So I'll briefly talk about AI and HR. I think the point of this slide is that there's a lot of optimism, especially from CEOs, but there's a lot of work that has to be done to make sure that AI is adopted in an ethical and an efficient way. When we think about how human resources will change, or others who work in the field of work, there's the point of thinking about digital first. People want to, you heard it here, right? Even 7-year-olds don't want cash, they want it digital, they want it on Venmo. So thinking about how do we digitize as opposed to another way of administration. having AI built into Microsoft Word or whatever system you're using to actually get quick feedback on your work as you're writing it. And then data, so the data itself becomes the oil or the most important natural resource of the economy. So thinking about how companies and HR departments, or even individuals for that matter, like for example, you're all here today, that's a data point. Whether you add it on your LinkedIn profile or wherever else you think it would be helpful to document that, even just for your own benefit, so that you can look back on what you learned here a year from now, that's data. So data becomes really important. AI can't function without data. And even the systems that were out like in November 2022 are now not as efficient because they're not trained on the latest data. I'm not going to go through every point on this slide, but suffice it to say there are many different ways to apply AI in HR, whether it's through helping people with career pathing. I read in the materials for the session today that the government and the organizations that work with the workforce already use AI to that effect. We're using AI and virtual reality can try on different jobs. So AI can be a very powerful way for people to get answers and help them plan their careers and their training needs. I think for those who are working with employment, both as job seekers and organizations that are facilitating employment or hiring, it's important to think about writing resumes and cover letters in a way that the AI will process and pick up certain keywords. But it's also very important to maintain the relationships. I really liked what one of the speakers said. The relationships are what make us human. So using AI is good. Having AI skills is also good, but it's also really important to have those informational interviews, to network, and to not forget the human aspect.
Great. Sort of the back half of this presentation is a lot of different samples, example use cases. So we'll kind of tick through some of these. Some are more complicated than others, but I think all are useful in their own ways, and there are a lot of resources in here that we're happy to share at any point. Quickly, on the other side of HR, we do have some applications for job seekers here, and again, there's a lot of text on this slide with a lot of different resources here, so if you have any questions about these, or one's recommended by some of our Mercer colleagues, so we can certainly share these. But in terms of the resume writing and job search, there's a lot of tools out there using AI that can customize and individualize some of those application tools or application resources to individual jobs or organizations. And then on the other end, there's even a lot of tools to simulate interviews, get you ready to prep for some of those real hiring panels, and even optimize your profile on LinkedIn and other sort of networking online tools and resources. So there's a ton out there on this slide, as you can see, and again, we can share any of this information, but as an individual, there's so much out there that's accessible and free, which I think is really great. But when it comes to using AI, one of the most practical applications, I think, is just writing and editing, and we have a lot of guidelines at Mercer about using AI, prompting it, and getting it to give you the best answer for your unique needs. So we'll take through some of these and how to prompt and what it looks like to create a great sample prompt. So first and foremost, I think it's important to be clear and concise. Start really, really simple in AI and ask it to summarize exactly what you want and give you exactly what you want. So if you want some key concepts summarized from a document, you should ask it specifically that. More on being specific, I think it's asking for specific outcomes too, and stay focused on your question. If you're looking for sort of maybe key talking points that could come out of a document, or sort of pieces of a document of legislation that you're looking for that are specific maybe to your county or your state, you should ask that specifically from the get-go, so that you can get those desired outcomes. Specifying the format, a lot of our colleagues use ChatGPT and our own system to help them write emails, so a lot of times we're asking it to draft it in sort of an email format. Maybe it's a more formal document document that you're looking for, or maybe you're looking to, for an output of some more data, or like an Excel spreadsheet or something like that, so you should be clear on that as well. And then providing any specific context that might be relevant to the question you're asking, and emphasizing those most essential elements. And then finally, tone and style. ChatGPT and AI generators are really good at, casual versus formal versus humorous. It can write you a poem if you want, so specify these things if that's what you're looking for. And I think, in my own experience, it's great to start really simple, maybe ask it in a short sentence what you're looking for, and then sort of refine it from there. If you ask multiple questions in a row, or take an output and say, you know what, no, that's not what I want, I actually want this, it'll have a conversation with you and you can get to where you're going, sort of following these prompting tools. So at Mercer, we developed a really simple prompt generator that looks something like this, that works well with our own AI tool, but something that our thought leaders sort of recommend doing is tell it to act like a blank, act like an expert in blank, act like a data analyst, act like a CEO, act like an HR compensation consultant, so that it gets in the mindset of what you're doing, what you need to know, and where it's pulling data from. And then be very clear. Ask for an example at the end. Also provide documentation if you are looking for a sample that's similar to something that you've already seen. Most AI chatbots can take in a document, read it, and kind of spit out something really similar, so we find that that's really helpful to do too.
Just keeping an eye on time, so we want to allow time for questions, so maybe should we move towards wrapping up, and then if people have questions about use cases, we can come
Yeah.
back. Does that work?
Yeah, I can just kind of quickly tick through. We have a lot on writing and grammar, great for emails. It's also great for creating transcripts of videos from Teams or Zoom meetings, and turning those into notes that you can share with your team. Other business functions, we talked about some of the co-pilots in email. It's also great at Excel, PowerPoint, and can give you prompts for those as well. It can do really simple research. We asked it this morning what this board does, and it gave us a lot of great links for resources for this community and how you can get involved. And you can do something as simple as brainstorming. If you don't really know where you're going, you can just type in, I'm thinking about writing or creating a presentation on Gen AI, where can I start? And it can kind of prompt you from there. Other cases for employers, again, emails and email responses are always key, especially if you're in client services, it's really, really helpful for that. Drafting job descriptions for HR functions, it can do that very, very quickly. It pulls a lot of data, I'm guessing, from LinkedIn. There's a ton out there, and it can do it in seconds, what might have taken you 30 minutes or an hour in the past. And then talent acquisition is a big one. I won't go through this, but this is a quick video of an AI chatbot actually interviewing somebody. I think that's a little bit more futuristic than where we are right now, but it's definitely coming.
Hello, this is Mike speaking. Hey Mike, I'm Jim. Nice to meet you, man.
That's
I'm
the
a
point of the
recruiter
video.
with
That's an
XYZ
AI.
company.
And you can see that it sounds human and informal. And obviously it raises ethical questions about where's that, who trained the model, how is that data shared? The AI didn't really identify itself as an AI. So we're trying to show you the art of the possible. We're not necessarily endorsing that this is the way to go. I think there's probably ways that this can be improved. But this technology is out there, so we all need to be very cognizant when we're dealing with recruiters or AIs posing as recruiters.
And that's it. The last plug is Mercer is beta testing a compensation AI tool that we call PayAI that can help create custom compensation philosophies and specific compensation outputs for individual jobs.
So I guess just to recap, AI is in its infancy. It's 2 to 3, generative AI is in its infancy. It's 2 to 3 years old, so it's kind of learning to walk, so we have to treat it as such. It's a tool for humans, made by humans, for a human purpose. So we have to remember that. And in that vein, change is a reality. So AI is here, it's not going anywhere. So if you haven't experimented with it yet, today is a good day to start. And ultimately, it's up to us to use it responsibly. It's not here to replace us, it's here to augment us. It's coming. Apple just announced that it's going to be a part of the next iOS, so if you have an iPhone, you're going to be using generative AI, even if you have chosen not to use it until now. So it's always important to use very powerful technology responsibly. So check it and make sure that you're using it consistent with its terms of service and with how you intend it to be used. So with that, I think we have a few minutes for questions.
Can we have a round of applause for these great presenters?